On July 20th warm summer day of 2017, Stephen and Katie packed up and drove down to Packton, Maryland, and by falsifying the documents saying they were not related, got married. In a twist that is starting to become my channel's trademark, Stephen's mother and Katie's adoptive parents were there in attendance.
Got him.
I go where I want and I do what I want. My belt match the kicks, don't you go Bonner?
T to the G, man, who you think it gonna be? And we back with another twisty turn story, ripped straight out of the headlines with Who is Steve Platt, the Gruesome Groomer? Whoever thought finding your biological parents could be a bad idea? In the minds of the children given up for adoption, it's common to fantasize, not only about your birth parents, but perhaps their lives now and then. Possibly even the circumstances that led to them giving you up for adoption in the first place. Well, this story is about such a child and the parents who gave her those answers, but left the world with more questions. Not much is known about Stephen Platt or his upbringing in Dover, New York, until his early 20s, when in 1995 he met a 15-year-old Alyssa over the internet. Stephen didn't waste any time grooming the underage Alyssa and soon thereafter into an online affair. Once Alyssa was inside Stephen's clutches, he flew to San Antonio, Texas to begin a sexual affair with a then-still 15-year-old Alyssa. For some odd reason, Alyssa's parents not only didn't object to their naive, underage 15-year-old daughter being in a sexual relationship with the college-aged New Yorker, but they gave their blessing. And Alyssa ran off to New York to be with Stephen soon after. When most girls are picking out prom dresses or what car they want to drive after they get their license, Alyssa was picking out baby names because she was pregnant with Stephen's child. Stephen, who was not only a groomer, but had terrible mood swings and violent outbursts and was unapologetic, kept Alyssa in constant fear throughout her pregnancy. January 11th, 1998, Alyssa would give birth to a healthy baby girl she would name Denise. Unfortunately, Stephen began to abuse baby Denise immediately and often, doing unspeakable things such as pinching and hitting her until she was black and blue, locking baby Denise in a cooler, and drowning her. Yes, drowning her. Alyssa fought through the Stockholm grooming haze Stephen had hypnotized her into and made a brave decision for the well-being of Denise by putting her up for adoption, knowing a chance at life with Stephen was impossible. Denise was adopted by a loving couple in Dover, New York named Kelly and Anthony Fusco, and they renamed Denise to Katie Rose Fusco in 1998. Katie had a great life being raised by Anthony and Kelly. She experienced everything a kid could ask for, describing Anthony and Kelly as loving and open-hearted. By the time Katie was 18, she was a well-rounded teen studying a career in the arts on her way to college, while both her parents, Stephen and Alyssa, had 2 more daughters. But do you remember in the beginning, when I stated it's common for the thoughts of the adopted to always wonder and want to search for their true parents? Well, Katie was no exception. Overcome with curiosity, and with Facebook only a few clicks away, Katie found her birth parents in no time. Once reconnecting with Stephen and Alyssa, they planned a reunion. But like any reasonable parents, the adoptive Anthony and Kelly were apprehensive. But Katie was adamant about meeting her birth parents, so eventually Anthony and Kelly caved and supported her decision to meet Stephen and Alyssa in Knitdale, North Carolina. Not known to Katie that the tensions have been running high between Stephen and Alyssa a while now, because for the last 9 years, Stephen has not been steadily employed and a majority of the financial burden was hoisted upon Alyssa's poor shoulders. Stephen was even more verbally abusive and violently destructive throughout the house that kept the family walking on eggshells around him. It didn't take long from meeting Stephen and Alyssa for Katie to change her whole college and art aspirations to move into Stephen and Alyssa's home in Henricus, Virginia, with her 2 younger sisters. Katie's adoptive parents were wary of these decisions Katie was making, but they've raised her for 18 years, trusting and supporting Katie, so they were going to continue. Katie moving into Stephen and Alyssa's home would be the straw that broke the camel's back. When Alyssa started noticing Stephen acting strange around Katie, He would shave his beard and try to look younger with his wardrobe, and even began talking different. Originally, being groomed by Stephen, the signs were the only thing starting to be apparent around here, with Stephen found sleeping next to Katie's bed on the floor towards the ends of the marriage. Confronting Stephen about this, he was confrontational and argumentative, so Alyssa decided to do another brave thing and disclose the type of abuse Stephen had inflicted on Katie as a baby. Yes, Alyssa was giving Katie all the answers she ever wanted to know, and she didn't skip or gloss over anything. But this strategy had the opposite effect, because Katie was already being groomed and under Stephen's spell. So much that Stephen and Katie got closer. The 40-year-old Stephen and 19-year-old Katie had fallen in love. Alyssa, in November 2016, she did one more brave thing and moved out and filed for divorce from Stephen. Unfortunately, Alyssa split custody of the youngest daughters with Stephen and Katie and decided to stay at the home with Stephen, now with nothing in their way. Stephen would continue his incestual relationship with none the wiser until the following May of 2017, when Alyssa would discover her 11-year-old daughter's journal and, after reading a few pages, drop the journal and to her knees. In the journal was a depiction of Stephen and Katie's unnatural relationship, seen and heard through the eyes of Alyssa's young daughter, with her daughter quoting Stephen saying, "I feel like a young couple. Did we drink too much last night?" And her own daughter's quotes calling Stephen a sick, "He's Satan. He's Satan," also writing, "When my dad goes to hell, he won't be getting tortured. He'll be there torturing other people." The entry concluded with, "If my dad and Katie have this baby together, it will be half demon." Horrified and enraged at the tragic discovery, Katie was pregnant with Stephen's baby. She screamed in frustration and anguish. Alyssa felt sick to her stomach. When Alyssa called her sick, deranged ex-husband to confront him, Stephen was dismissive and said, "I thought you knew we were in love," and hung up the phone. Alyssa's next call was to local law enforcement and to bring them all the evidence she had of Stephen's incest. Local law enforcement interviewed Stephen's youngest daughters for signs of abuse, but did not arrest Stephen whatsoever, and Katie and Stephen continued living together under the same roof. On July 20th's warm summer day of 2017, Stephen and Katie packed up and drove down to Packton, Maryland, and by falsifying the documents saying they were not related, got married. In a twist that is starting to become my channel's trademark, Stephen's mother and Katie's adoptive parents were there in attendance. When Katie's adoptive parents were asked why they came to the wedding, they were quoted saying, "All we can do is be supportive of Katie." A few months later, on September 1st, 2017, Katie would give birth to a healthy baby boy named Bennett. Seeming on the road to happily ever after, 4 months later, Stephen and Katie would be arrested and extradited back to Virginia. Police did genetic testing on Katie, Bennett, and Stephen to determine genetic familiarity, and with the results back, Katie and Stephen would be charged with incest, adultery, and contributing to delinquency. In court, Stephen's attorney skated around the incestual grooming relationship he perpetrated, but played on the heartstrings of the court by painting Stephen as a 40-year-old going through an emotionally difficult divorce, and since she showed up at his door at 18 with no previous bond, Stephen fell in love with Katie, and that outweighed their biological connection. After the court proceedings, Stephen posted bail with the strict conditions to remain in the state and to also not have any contact with Katie. But the court did not deny him access to his son Bennett, who was now living with Stephen's 72-year-old mother, Grace, ever since Katie and Stephen were arrested. Alyssa was furious at the court's inept behavior to stop Stephen's out-of-control grooming behavior, and was later to be quoted saying, "Stephen shouldn't have been allowed back to North Carolina, where he had access to his house and weapons and the baby. I can understand keeping a baby with family, but not Grace. She can't stop Stephen from seeing the baby, even if she wanted to." A week after Stephen bailed out of jail, Katie bonded out, and Katie had the same restriction from seeing Stephen that he had with her. Katie moved back in with her adoptive parents in New York, but Katie was different now. Realizing the tragedy of this incestual relationship, Katie breaks her bond restriction and calls Stephen over the phone. Stephen was not only heartbroken, but now in a murderous rage that was boiling out of control, aimed directly at his daughter bride and baby boy Bennett. Stephen formulated a plan, and on April 11th, 2018, Stephen drove to his mother's home and picked up his infant son Bennett. Stephen concocted a story that he was taking Bennett to reunite him with his mother Kate in New York. Unsure, Grace still gave baby Bennett to Stephen, hoping the best for them all. Tragically for Bennett, that was the last time anyone would see him alive again. Stephen drove baby Bennett to his home in Knightdale, North Carolina, and strangled Bennett until not alive, and callously tossed his lifeless infant body in an old dark closet and shut the door. This was only the beginning of Stephen's murderous rampage. He drove 600 miles through the night in a blind fury exceeding the speeds of 130 miles an hour to get to New York by morning and confront Katie and her wrongs. Stephen arrived at 5 a.m. on the same street as Anthony and Kelly Fusco's home, stalking their movements for hours, while Katie and her adoptive parents were none the wiser. Stephen was familiar with the Fusco's routine, and on this day was the day the family picked up for the day to drive to Connecticut and visit Katie's adoptive grandmother. And right on schedule, the Fusco family, with Katie in tow, emerged from the house and all packed inside their Toyota pickup truck, leaving the driveway and turning down the main street. Stephen, following one car back the whole time, is waiting for his opportunity to make his move. But the mere sight of Katie, seemingly happy, without a care in the world about him, sent him over the edge. Stephen barreled to the side of the Fusco's truck and immediately started firing his high-powered assault rifle into the vehicle, emptying not only a clip into Katie and her adoptive father, but his rage. An off-duty firefighter witnessed the whole murderous pandemonium from across the street, and when Stephen drove off and it was safe, he dialed 911. But that wouldn't be the only call regarding Stephen the police department would get that day. Another call would be from Stephen's own mother, Grace. Grace told the officers that Stephen had called her and confessed to everything he had just done. From callously choking baby Bennett to emptying his high-powered rifle clip into his daughter bride and her adoptive father. It wouldn't take long for authorities to catch up to the Gruesome Groomer. 5 miles away from where he killed Katie and her adoptive father, Stephen would be found on the side of the road in his pickup with a single self-inflicted gunshot. Alyssa would be the only one to survive the tragedy of the Gruesome Groomer with 2 out of 3 of her daughters. She is quoted saying, "It was a tragic loss over Katie and her adoptive dad, but at least we don't have to look over our shoulder any longer." Like I said, man, we back with another one, man, full of crazy twists and turns. The craziest twist and turn for me was, how could the family be at the wedding talking about their supporting? And another crazy part was, how could the court system still allow him to have access to the child? This whole thing is tragic. And when I was doing my research, I actually noticed that nobody was focusing on the fact that he groomed not only one kid, which was Alyssa, but he also groomed his daughter again as well. Her actions were not the same that she would have been making if she was in the right frame of mind. She was on her way to school. She was a well-rounded kid. She had the full trust of her adoptive parents because she never did anything that raised any alarms. That was clear grooming, cut and dry. She went to visit them one time, and then out of nowhere she said, no college, no anything. I'm going to move out here and move inside. I don't care what anybody says. That's grooming. He must have groomed her. If you look at it clearly, the signs are right there. He found 2 young, underage women, girls really, and then convinced them to throw away their whole futures, get pregnant by him, and be supportive of his whole decision to be rude, domineering, verbally abusive, and have his babies, and be financially supportive of the whole situation as well. That's grooming. Sorry. That's all there is to it. Also, I want to say that some family members in the court system completely failed these 2 women right here, and the adoptive father in this whole case. All the adoptive family wanted to do was open their hearts and their home and raise another child that wasn't theirs and give them a good life, which they did. And this is how they were rewarded. So Katie not only was robbed of her future and her life, so was baby Bennett. Man. But I mean, T to the G, man, who you think it gonna be? Thank you for tuning in, man. Make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And let me know. There's 10 other streamers out there doing it like me, but...
That a little 10. I'm maxed out.